Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com. Good evening and welcome to Jenna Ellis tonight. So a lot happening in the political world. First, breaking earlier today, a New York appeals court has given former President Donald Trump 10 more days to post his bond to satisfy the civil fraud judgment and cut the amount necessary for him to post to $175 million, that coming from CNN. And this coming, of course, in the wake of the Senate voting in the early hours of Saturday morning to pass the $1.2 trillion spending package. And conservative members of the House are very upset about this going to Joe Biden's desk. And Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has filed a motion to vacate the chair for Speaker Johnson. She said that this was a warning shot. This was to give him the pink slip. And a reporter followed up and said, well, if you're filing the motion to vacate the chair, do you really want to oust him? This is what she had to say.
So just to follow up on that, though, you're calling this a pink slip, a warning sign. The bottom line, you want Speaker Johnson out.
I wouldn't have filed a motion to vacate if I didn't. We need a new speaker. This is not personal against Mike Johnson. He's a very good man, and I have respect for him as a person, but he is not doing the job. The proof is in the vote count today. He passed a budget that should have never been brought to the floor, did not represent our conference, and it was passed with the Democrats and without the majority of the majority.
What happened?
And this also coming as Representative Mike Gallagher is announcing that he's going to leave Congress, not just not seek re-election, but actually leave Congress in April, which is, of course, ahead of November and will impact the GOP's very, very slim and ever narrowing majority, but after the deadline for his home state to call for a special election. So Marjorie Taylor Greene has also responded to this initially from an account called Amuse that is talking, saying the House ought to expel Rep. Gallagher immediately. His ploy to remain in office until the 19th prevents him from being replaced, leaving his seat empty until after the November election. If Speaker Johnson expels him before the 9th, he can be replaced now. So Marjorie Taylor Greene responded and said, yes, he should be expelled if he refuses to leave immediately in order to allow his district to hold a special election to elect a representative so that the district can have a voice for the remainder of the 118th Congress. Leaving after the deadline is intentional betrayal. So joining me now is Ryan Fournier. He is the founder of Students for Trump. And Ryan, I think that MTG maybe is the only one that is concerned about actually playing 4D chess and taking the rules of the House strategically and using them to Republicans' advantage.
No, I think you're right. And, the thing about this entire bill, and it was shoved down people's throats. This is probably a worse off spending bill than I've even seen Nancy Pelosi propose in her time being Speaker of the House. It's full of pork. We're talking about $1 million to go to Lisa Murkowski to go and build a Leaders Archive, what they call it, Leaders Archive, which is probably just going to be a shrine for her and her father. It's disgraceful. When you look at the spending, when you look at how this bill was released at 2:30 in the morning, no representative, not even MTG, Lauren Boebert, none of them. And I spoke to some of these representatives offhand or offline, and they told me they didn't even know the language of this bill or what was even being put into it until the American public knew. That, to me, is unacceptable. We cannot run a government, run a Congress, when you are not allowing the people that are there to make the country better, to fight for their constituents. You don't let them have access. You don't let them put amendments forth. You want to bum rush this bill full of all this pork. Nobody knows what's in it. Nobody knows the outcome. And then all of a sudden, within one day, we have this bill passes. It's a travesty for the nation. A travesty for the nation. This is not how Congress should operate.
Yeah, and rather than just having a continuing resolution, Speaker Johnson justified this by saying, diverts a government shutdown. I mean, my opinion as a conservative is I'm okay with shutting the government down and giving Biden less resources.
Same.
Totally fine with me.
Shut it down.
But they could have had, but they could have had a continuing resolution instead of this basically it's a 2-part minibus rather than, but it really is a big omnibus.
Right.
So where are you at with Speaker Johnson? Because I was very supportive of him initially when he took over finally from Kevin McCarthy, but it seems like his priorities are a little misplaced, because we do know that this spending bill contains funding for abortion, the LGBT agenda. I mean, all of these foreign overseas priorities. I mean, things that clearly are not the conservative agenda.
Right. I think about a week and a half ago, I was more so on his side. But now, after seeing all of this, I'm really disgusted. I do not think we're going to be able to vacate him, though. I'll be very honest with you. I don't like to lie to the voters, to the people who support me, support you. I'll be very honest here. We lost Mike Gallagher. If he doesn't step out, if he's not expelled, rather, then we won't be able to have a special election until November, right? We got to wait till November. He's going to be a no vote, right? We already lost Don Bacon. The majority is thinning out, right, in ways that I think people haven't thought of before. If we go in and we don't have the votes to vacate the speaker, to pick a new speaker, or even if we do, I think Hakeem Jeffries will be the new speaker. And that is what no one wants. We do not want that. So if we have to wait till November to do this, maybe that's the best thing. Maybe that's the better route to go. But if we go into this and we fail, we're going to look like complete and total morons. And that's going to risk us in the end of the year, in November, end of 24, with gaining a majority in both the Senate and the House. That's kind of where I come at with this. I do not want us to risk this if we do not have the votes.
I totally agree, and I sympathize with MTG's remarks and asking those questions of Speaker Johnson. But is vacating the chair really the best solution right now? I personally don't think so, for all of the reasons that you just articulated wonderfully, Ryan. But that begs the question as well in the last minute that we have with you: why is the Republican majority thinning out? Why do we have Ken Buck and Rep. Gallagher and these people leaving when clearly the majority is bleeding representatives?
Right. The timing, that everybody should be questioning the timing of this. This is the reason why that they're doing this is so that we can have a thinned out majority where you have Republicans who will vote with Democrats. There is a bill that they're trying to propose to get Donald Trump off the ballot. And I think a lot of these reps, Don Bacon, Gallagher, they all support this. And I think either they were put into a corner to do this, or they're doing it on their own, conscience or will, whatever they want to say. I think that there's a play here, and people need to be more careful, watch out, keep paying attention, but they want to get Donald Trump off the ballot, and Congress is trying to pass legislation to do just that.
Wow. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for joining. And, these are rhinos, Republicans in name only. We'll be right back with more here on Jenna Ellis Tonight. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. Well, we do need to talk about the Daily Wire and Candice Owens. And this is not just a matter of gossip or taking one side or the other. I love Daily Wire. I know a lot of the people there. Jeremy Boring is a very dear friend. I've met Candice. I've been on her show several times. I have nothing personal against her at all. But I think that conservatives need to take away two bigger principles with the Daily Wire and Candice Owens deciding to part ways. And the first of this is no one is actually a free speech absolutist, and certainly not organizations that stand for something. So when we're talking about cancel culture, when we're talking about the idea that someone is canceled for their views, when it comes to a public forum, that's a very different question. And when it comes to the government, that is a very different question than organizations that employ people specifically from a perspective that they want them to advocate for. So for example, here at Salem, if I just suddenly decided to become a left-wing woke liberal, probably my employment contract would end, and that would be okay. It's not Salem canceling me. It's a matter of our hosts, while we can diversify on a lot of opinions, have to at least come from the general premise that our audience can trust that we are genuinely conservative in principle. So Andrew Klavan, who is a host on Daily Wire, addressed this on Friday in the wake of the split between Daily Wire and Candice Owens. Here's what he had to say.
Thing that is going to come from the right, the people who think that the attack we're going to get from the right, because who cares what attack we get from the left? They kill babies. We don't care what they think. But the big hit we're going to get from the right is free speech. And I want to explain this. I'm a big free speech advocate. I used to say there was a free speech purist, but that would be silly. Nobody's a free speech purist, but I'm a very, very strong supporter, not just of the First Amendment, but of the point of view that goes on behind the First Amendment. And this idea that we have canceled somebody for what they say is absurd on the face of it, and I will explain why. I can come in here and express any opinion I want. No one will ever tell me, don't say this, don't say that, or say this or say that. It just doesn't happen. But if I woke up one morning and I thought to myself, you know what? I've been saying abortion is bad, but really it's great. It is great. There's nothing I like better than sucking the brains out of children. In fact, we shouldn't just, do it while they're in the womb. We should just do it all wait till they're 1 or 2 when it's more fun because you can hear them screaming. If that suddenly became my opinion, I couldn't bring it in here. Because the Daily Wire is not a phone company where anybody can talk. It's not a social media company that I think should let everybody express an opinion. It's essentially an online magazine. It is a journal that stands for something.
Andrew Klavan is absolutely right. And I'm glad that Daily Wire stands for something and stands against other things. This is actually a good thing. So this is not about free speech. It's actually standing for something. And the question for conservatives then should be, do you support what that organization or that online journal stands for? And if you do, support them. Don't cancel your subscription to Daily Wire Plus because you understand what they stand for. But if you disagree with what they stand for, like Bud Light, for example, then that's why it's perfectly fine to boycott them and say we don't want to use our money to fund something that we as conservatives stand against. But recognize this isn't about a public forum. It's about supporting the organizations that are truly conservative, that stand for something. So don't get so trapped into this free speech, cancel culture nonsense. Understand that these are platforms that genuinely stand for something, and the principles of conservatism are something good that they are standing for. The second thing that Klavan addressed that I want to highlight that is very important is that conservative commentators aren't all truth tellers. A lot of them are simply in show business. This is what Klavan had to say on that.
I walked down the hall and I said, if you want to bring a woman into this operation, I just met her because that's one of the most talented broadcasters I have ever met. And I would say it then and I would say it now. She is and remains an amazing talent, a person who radiates star quality and someone who just understands what the mic and the camera are all about in ways that I don't come close to. And I just truly admire and still admire the amazing talent that she has. And by the way, Jeremy did not hire her when I said so. He may regret that because it cost him, a lot of money to wait. But still, I understood what she was the minute I saw her. I was on her show once or twice at the beginning, but I never listened to it. And the reason I never listened to it was because of all the stuff that I felt was silly. I mean, some of the stuff I felt I knew what she was going to say, which was the Brexit stuff, which I'm all in favor of. But the stuff about the moon landing being fixed, rigged, and 9/11 being an inside job she would hint at. And recently there was Mrs. Macron, the first lady of France, is a man, and also it's silly stuff. And the reason it's silly stuff is, one, it's not true. It's the amount of conspiracy it would take to fake the moon landing with nobody saying that it was fake is insane, and everything that sounds like science about it is ridiculous. It's not true. None of those things is true. 9/11 wasn't an inside job. The moon landing wasn't faked. Mrs. Macron has a daughter who looks just like her. She's not a man. But if they were true, Candice wouldn't know. And I wouldn't know, because we don't have that kind of inside information. I don't care what people tell you. That's not the kind of thing that you know unless you are a top investigative reporter and can come up with the documents and show and prove the truth. But all that stuff is show business to me, That's what she did. She has this enormous talent. That's her gift. She has a right to decide how to use it. None of my business. She has a huge audience, I'm sure still. And so I guess they like that stuff. It's nothing to me. It just doesn't mean anything to me. It's not the sort of thing I listen to. But that's the way she wanted to go with her talent. That's a choice that each person makes on his own or her own. And I am not privy in any way, shape, or form to her thinking.
So again, Andrea Klavan is absolutely right that there are many talents that are in show business because they have found that the conservative commentator position is very lucrative. So this is what social media has called Con Inc. or Conservative Inc. or MAGA Inc., for example. There are a lot of people that have capitalized off of Trump's brand, for example. And so are they genuinely conservatives? Are they genuinely in this because they want to be truth tellers, or are they just in it for a job? And I think as consumers of the media and of content, we need to be a lot more of the people who we pay attention to and the people that we listen to. Are we spending our time wisely? Do we follow principles instead of just personalities? You need to know what you stand for and why, and then listen to the voices that are giving you information you may not always agree with, but is because they are coming from a position of principled conservatism, and they may challenge some of your assumptions, but you're listening to them because it matters, not just because they're in show business. We'll be right back with more talking about this with my good friend, James Lindsay. As you know, my friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of their life. He didn't stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike created the Giza Dream bed sheets. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Mike found the world's best cotton. It is ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. Mike's Giza sheets come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. The Giza Dream Sheets come in a variety of sizes and colors. Mike's latest incredible deal is the sale of the year. For a limited time, you will receive 50% off the Giza Dream Sheets. You will also receive a set for as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com, click on the radio podcast square, and use the promo code Jenna. There you will find not only this amazing offer, but also deep discounts on all MyPillow products, including the MyPillow 2.0 mattress topper, which I have and I love, the MyPillow kitchen towel sets, and now even flannel sheets and so much more. We definitely need flannel sheets for as crazy as all of this weather has been lately. So go to mypillow.com and make sure you use the promo code Jenna or call 1-800-564-8475. That's 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna. So here to talk about cancel culture versus standing for something, and also truth tellers versus the grifters and those who are just interested in being showmen over actual substance, is my good friend James Lindsay, who is with New Discourses and also wrote the brand new book, The Queering of the American Child. So James, let's start first with this whole idea of cancel culture. I mean, the Constitution obviously provides the right to freedom of association. And I think that there is a big difference between a platform like the Daily Wire saying, Candice doesn't really stand for the things that we are interested in standing in. She's going against some of the things, in fact, that we do stand for. So we're going to cut ties, versus a platform like X or Twitter or Facebook saying that in a public forum, we're going to censor Americans' right to freedom of speech.
Well, I mean, so cancel culture, people need to understand, is a euphemism. What cancel culture means is struggle session. So there is a fundamental difference when management is making a decision to cut ties with an employee based on management's decisions, and the situation where there is a angry mob demanding that those ties be cut. That's closer to cancel culture. And in fact, when it is just the result of an angry mob enforcing a view of the world that management may not have already agreed with, that is cancel culture. But that's actually more accurately described as a struggle session being held against management using the person in question as the focal point. So if in this particular case, if the Daily Wire thinks that Candice Owens represents their brand poorly, and that is a decision made in accordance with their management decision, whether there's some advisement from advisors or whatever, from board members or whatever, then that's not necessarily cancel culture. Cancel culture is when you have an angry mob, usually on the internet, but maybe protesting outside your door, demanding some kind of a change that you're not actually willing to go along with or interested in going along with until the pressure causes you to get pushed over the edge.
And that makes a lot of sense. I think it's really too easy for a lot of conservatives. If there is someone like Candice Owens that has a huge following, she's enormously popular. And then when the Daily Wire cuts ties with her, even if that is their own internal decision, to immediately take this is cancel culture, this is against freedom of speech. And conservatives, I think, need to be a little bit more savvy and parse the issue with a little more complexity.
Well, people, people need to understand the difficulty of the position that people like the Daily Wire were in for this. So to make that more clear, let's take a parallel situation, which I happen to know occurred because it was told to me at the beginning of 2020, which is Nicole Hannah-Jones at the New York Times Magazine. Nicole Hannah-Jones is, by virtually every conservative's assessment, a grifter. She's also a communist. She's also became a giant liability for the New York Times. And I was told privately, but it never became public, that it was a liability that they wanted to figure out how to get rid of. But they knew that Nicole Hannah-Jones had the social media clout to be able to burn the New York Times to the ground, figuratively speaking, if they tried to cut ties. Oh, it's racism. It's impossible to make traction as a black woman, blah, blah, blah. So when you have a very popular figure with a kind of very devoted crowd following on social media, it puts the organization in a very difficult situation if they find some reason that they have to cut ties. And I think what we're seeing in this situation is that the social media backlash has come after the fact, not before the fact. And it's therefore the cancel culture arrow in some sense points the other direction.
Yeah, and to go along with that same kind of analogy of Hannah-Jones versus Candice Owens, and having they're similar in the sense that they both have large followings. They both, I think, are rightly termed grifters in the sense that Candice often is a showman. She's using her talent to go viral, to get more fame, to get more money, rather than necessarily standing for something, particularly conservative values and principles. This is the reason that I don't particularly follow her, and I don't consider her a conservative commentator worth listening to. But there is this difference, I think, between people who are in a publishing arena or working for some of these, whether it's the New York Times wanting to spout liberal nonsense, or it's a conservative on the Daily Wire that wants to adhere faithfully to conservative principles. Some people are just more interested in getting the clickbait and going viral than they are actually standing for something and being consistent in those principles. So for conservatives who genuinely want to consider where they spend their time, who they listen to, it isn't a matter of just popularity or cult following as much as it is actually looking at the content. And so how do you parse the difference between a truth teller versus just a showman?
It's very difficult to tell, honestly. And, the description that you give about chasing clicks actually, in this case, cuts both ways. I'm a little bit I don't want to say I'm on the fence about this particular issue, because that would mean that I have to know what's going on. I know who Candice Owens is because the internet talks about her. I have never shown the slightest bit of interest in what's going on in her general vicinity, except that I know that about every 9 to 12 months, a massive amount of drama follows wherever she goes. And I therefore have to know who she is. And other than that, I have no interest in the subject whatsoever. But it certainly does cut both ways. The way that you can usually tell if somebody is just working the show is whether or not they're primarily just working a crowd and making huge demands. Like, nobody's all that confused about like what just happened with Don Lemon and Elon Musk. Like, he's demanding like his own rocket ship or something. I'm being facetious. He did demand a
that one beat headline, I think. But yeah.
Goodness knows how much money. We all know that he's a disingenuous player. And then the kind of giveaway is after the fact. When Elon canceled Don Lemon, what immediately happened was Don Lemon made this huge fuss about it and tried to turn it into a gigantic like fundraising campaign, which means it was more about Don Lemon than anything else. And parallels exist. But like I started with this piece here, I honestly see that cuts both ways. The Daily Wire benefits tremendously from hiring people who are showmen who will generate large amounts of clickbait income very quickly, but they're wielding a double-edged sword if that person is short on principle. So this goes back to what you said in the beginning, Jenna, which is that conservatives need a lot more discernment, which seems to be lacking overall.
Yeah, and I think I think it's fair that for a platform that does generate its income based on views, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's certainly nothing wrong with saying, let's generate these articles that people want to read and want to listen to. But if that's the only focus and going viral just because you want to generate the clicks and the income, and so you're going to go wherever that leads, I think that's the issue, rather than having really good content that people just want to listen to. So we're going to be right back with more with James Lindsay and address the issue of Christ is King. We'll be right back. Throughout history, there are clear moments that define our nation's path, and now you can own a piece of that history. I'm thrilled to announce the official Newt Gingrich contract with America coin from our friends at Legacy Precious Metals in partnership with Speaker Gingrich. This limited edition 1 ounce 99.99% silver coin commemorates the historic victory in 1994 when the Republican Party, under Speaker Gingrich's guidance, took control of Congress. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin also symbolizes the transformative political platform that led to the landmark achievements like the overhaul of the U.S. welfare system and the Balanced Budget Act. This is a limited edition coin that will sell out. So whether you're looking for the perfect gift or you want to own a piece of history, act fast before they run out. The Newt Gingrich contract with America coin is more than an investment. It's a tribute to honest government and America. You can order it online at newtgingrichsilvercoin.com. That's newtgingrichsilvercoin.com, and use promo code Jenna, that's JENNA, to get $10 off your purchase. Go to newtgingrichsilvercoin.com now. And I'm continuing my conversation with Dr. James Lindsay, who is the co-author of the brand new book, The Queering of the American Child. And James, the other social media phenomenon kind of in the wake of the Daily Wire and Candice Owens split was this whole idea of this phrase, Christ is King, and whether or not this could be anti-Semitic. So Jason Whitlock posted this on Twitter. He said, "I'm asking this sincerely. I'm a student of life. I'm not that smart. There are many things I do not know. This is a sincere question without snark or sarcasm or trolling. How is saying, quote unquote, Christ is King anti-Semitic? When did this become true? Is it true?" I responded back and said, that's like asking how the phrase Black Lives Matter doesn't really mean that Black Lives Matter, or the problem with the term social justice or Christian nationalism. These are all phrases designed to signal or virtue signal. Of course, Christ is King, but the phrase Christ is King is used to describe an anti-Israel sentiment and false theology that God has abandoned the Jews and Christians are the new chosen people. So, James, I think that the Christian response to this was basically suggesting, like, how can you possibly take over our phrase because we proclaim that, of course, Jesus Christ is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But I think that they're missing how this term has been co-opted by some people and some very prominent voices, including, in my opinion, Candice Owens, to be an anti-Semitic cudgel against people like Ben Shapiro, who are Jewish. And in that context, don't we need to be aware of how these terms are being used?
Yeah, that's basically my entire job, is trying to tell people how terms are being used under the auspices of something that in the very formal sense is called conceptual polysemy, which means giving more than one conceptual meaning to the same words. And this is exactly how, if you take Satan as a deceiver, Satan as a deceiver would operate. Of course, I think you kind of have the wrong person here to talk about this issue, because what I've learned on the internet in the last 24 hours is that you're not allowed to talk about this issue unless you pretend to be Christian or are Christian, and I am not Christian and don't pretend to be. So I'm not exactly allowed to talk about this. But Jesus, if I might make so bold after that statement, was very clear that you'll know them by their fruits. And so what you see in the wake of virtually every single person, to answer kind of Jason's question, you can see, first of all, three things. Number one, you can see that the idea that Christ is king could be used to say, hey, listen, Jews, Christ is king, bend the knee. And if, number two, if you talk to a lot of Jewish people who are now starting to tip away from the Democratic Party that they've often supported, or even independents, and start considering to vote for Republicans, or tipping more conservative in these crazy communist times we live in, what you see is that they're feeling alienated. They detect the other meaning, that you're going to bow to Christian norms. But then Jesus said, know them by their fruit. So the third thing is, virtually every time it comes up, what you see on at least social media is not a trickle, not a drip, not a flow, a flood of viciously, virulently, obviously anti-Semitic sentiment that follows immediately, which gives away the intent. You can't assume the intent of any given person, but you can judge by the fruits. And when what you see is that this phrase, like, let's say that I say, maybe you should pay attention. This is what I did yesterday. You should pay attention that there are more than one meaning involved here. And this is what you did with Jason Whitlock. There's more than one meaning here. Go look at the comments that come underneath those tweets. See what happens. Hundreds, or actually, in my case, thousands of replies that are calling me Jewish, saying that I have Jewish masters, telling me to bend the knee, blah, 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 the whole thing, giving away the whole game, that there is a second meaning here, which is intentionally anti-Semitic, which is intentionally designed to make conservative Christians look bad, which is intentionally designed to attach anti-Semitism to conservative Christianity to freak out Democrats, which is intentionally designed to keep conservative Jews and conservative Christians from being able to work together.
And this is exactly why you're the perfect person to discuss this, because Christians and conservatives need to be more savvy and not just fall into the traps that the left is laying for them, or these people who are using and harnessing these terms and weaponizing them to cast everyone who uses them in that same light, and saying that the few people who use these terms in an anti-Semitic way then speak for the whole. But by the way, apparently, according to social media, I'm not allowed to comment on this, even though I am a Christian and I do believe that Christ is king and he is Lord, just because I'm a woman, right? And this is a leftist mentality that if you don't participate exactly in the experience the way that these people would prefer that you do, like men can't comment on the question of abortion because they don't have uteruses, or women can't comment on a white woman can't comment on the Black experience because, we haven't lived it. These are ways that they're intentionally trying to silence us from the debate. So how should conservatives move forward? Because I also saw a lot of commentary by people saying, well, okay, maybe that's some people, but I'm not going to stop saying that Christ is king because I don't want to be silenced. I do think we need to be a little more savvy and aware than that.
Yeah, well, look at Matthew chapter 10. Jesus was very clear that he said he's sending you out, his disciples, he's sending them out to tell the truth. In Matthew 10:14, he says, if people don't want to hear the truth, shake the dust from your feet. In other words, don't waste your time and don't sweat it. Proclaim the truth and move on when people aren't ready to hear it. But in Matthew 10:16, he says, and I bring this up all the time because of the call to discernment, I send you out to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. So you have to be discerning. You have to be able to go out with that wisdom that clarity that there is deception. He says, I'm sending you out into a world filled with ravening wolves. And when the authorities arrest you, he goes on to say later in this same piece, he says, when the authorities arrest you, don't worry about what to say, because if you have true faith, your Father will give you the words. But before that, he says you need to be aware that you're going out into dangerous territory. So you need to be as discerning or wise as serpents, but you also need to be as gentle as doves. The people who are proclaiming Christ as king in this environment are failing at least one of those two principles. They are either not being discerning, and they're using the phrase honestly and appealing to their free speech and saying, I won't be silenced, I won't have my religion trampled upon, and they're not being discerning to the overall circumstance, or they are actually using it in a malicious way, like we were just discussing, in which case they're not being gentle as doves, they're being the exact opposite. And in fact, there's nothing really good to say about those people. So they're failing the commandment of Matthew 10:16 in either case. So what do you do? Well, there have been many examples, and the Christians who own and run and operate and work for the Babylon Bee have been overwhelmingly, go look at their Twitter feeds. They've almost all weighed in, and they've almost all said, like you have, I'm Christian, I believe Christ is king. And you have to understand that using this in a flippant or glib way or as a weaponized tool is possible, is happening, and it's alienating and damaging Christian witness. It's alienating relationships between Christians and Jews, and it's overall making Christian conservatives look bad in a way that's actually operational for the enemies of Christianity that are both in governments here and abroad.
Yeah, so well said, James Lindsay. So appreciate your insights, and this is why conservatives on social media have to be more savvy and understand exactly what's going on. Don't just take these things at face value and be siloed in partisan politics or personality. You have to get down to the root of the issue. We'll be right back. And finally tonight, late Friday, Kate Middleton, who is the Princess of Wales, did release a video responding to the worldwide inquiry of what exactly was going on with this video. This is just a portion. Watch.
In January, I underwent major abdominal surgery in London, and at the time, it was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful. However, tests after the operation found cancer had been present. My medical team therefore advised that I should undergo a course of preventative chemotherapy, and I'm now in the early stages of that treatment.
So, of course, our deepest sympathies to the princess, her entire family. She is so young, only 42, to be dealing with this unspecified cancer issue. And apparently it was resolved with the abdominal surgery, but now she is undergoing preventative treatment. But this does beg the question of the PR surrounding this entire controversy, because a lot of the media has rushed to defend Kate Middleton, understandably, because she's cancer stricken, but then rushed to suggest that the public's outcry of asking, well, what is the truth here, was somehow unwarranted. But let's journey back to Kensington Royal's statement. This is what they had posted when they disclosed that Kate Middleton was admitted to the hospital yesterday. So this was January 17th. Back then, they said the Princess of Wales was admitted to the hospital yesterday for planned abdominal surgery. The surgery was successful, and it's expected she will remain in the hospital for 10 to 14 days. It goes on to talk about that. Then this highlighted portion says, Kensington Palace will therefore only provide updates on Her Royal Highness's progress when there is significant new information to share. Well, I think that her and her doctors discovering that this was actually cancer and getting preventative treatments is kind of a qualification of new information that is worthy to share. So joining me now to discuss is Megan Basham, who is a writer for the Daily Wire. And Meg, I think that they just completely botched the PR on this. And the only reason that Kate Middleton was basically forced to do this video is because of how badly the PR was botched. What's your take?
I think that's true. And, you know, just to give a little context as far as somebody who works in the news business on the reporting side and covered this, what we saw was, I think, you know, your more reputable, non-hot gossip sites and outlets didn't really pay attention to this story until they released that photo. And so I think that's what we need to remember, is that this manipulated photo was released from the palace. And that's when, you know, news outlets like Morning Wire took notice, because there was, at that point, sort of an unprecedented reaction from established reputable news agencies who said, we have to kill this photo. So you saw AP, you saw Reuters, you saw a lot of really well-known wire services saying, we have to kill this photo from the palace because we have now determined that it's been manipulated. And not only that, you saw like the French news agency saying the palace is no longer a trusted source of images and of news. So that was actually a significant development that went way beyond, sort of the tabloid news. And I think, you can sort of look at some of what happened as being very distasteful. To give you one example, Stephen Colbert's monologue where he made jokes about William cheating on Kate, and there was, no evidence of that. There were no facts backing that up, and to just wild speculation is one thing. But to talk about why the palace handled this so badly, so not only did they release a manipulated photo, assuming that all the information we have is accurate, they sent Kate out to sort of make a statement taking ownership and taking blame for that photo, which, given the announcement since then, seems a little startling, maybe a little callous to say, let's have her go out and make the apology for releasing a manipulated photo that certainly somebody should have checked. Somebody in Palace and PR needs to explain how that got through, all of the checks and balances that should certainly be there. So when I look at that, I think that's a key thing to remember. And then when we see this statement, this shows to me, that's why I do have some questions about the release of the manipulated photo still, because Kate's statement, she said that she did not, or at least the palace sources have said, they did not want to just release the statement now saying, actually, Kate has cancer. She was very adamant that she wanted to go out and give this video statement herself to reassure people, understanding that it would probably be too jarring, too upsetting to just release a cold print statement, which tells me her PR instincts tend to be very good. And that makes me wonder what happened with the photo debacle. Whose idea was it to have her, put out a Twitter statement taking ownership of it? So it was just very, very badly managed. And I think that's the key thing to know is once you have a palace that is releasing photos that are no longer trustworthy, at that point, news outlets are going to be concerned because then what can they trust from the palace?
Right. And this then begs the question of newsworthiness, because a lot of this pushback now from those same mainstream outlets are suggesting that this is nobody's business and she has a right to privacy here. Well, let's not forget she's a working member of the royal monarchy and basically has a public office in Britain. I mean, this to me is shades of what the White House did with Defense Secretary Austin Lloyd when he was in the hospital for several days before anybody in the public knew. And then everybody was saying, well, what's going on in the White House? Why aren't we understanding this as a matter of national security? And so I think overall, the newsworthy piece here is not so much that we want to invade Kate's privacy or we want to have, some of these tabloid rumor mills. I mean, even here on this program, we kind of made, a light of it saying, these rumors are getting really, really nasty and kind of bad, and actually played the Stephen Colbert segment for that exact reason. Yeah. But it is newsworthy when it becomes a matter of trustworthiness, when it's for government officials. So overall, what do you think is the principle that we as consumers of the news need to take when we're seeing that a lot of these government offices just aren't being forthcoming?
Yeah, and I think that's the problem. And I do think a lot of Americans tend to not consider the fact that these are public people in the UK. Certainly their lifestyles, their homes, their roles are all bankrolled by the British public. So in that sense, the public has a vested interest in what's happening in the palace when you say, our taxpayer dollars go to fund this. So I do get that. And when you see her as a mom, and we're about the same age, and I see her there with on the bench by herself, looking extremely dignified, extremely strong. My heart goes out to her. I think of her children. But yeah, I do think that I'm torn. I feel like if they had hinted that, listen, from the get-go, right now they are managing some medical difficulties, I think they could have been more forthcoming in a way that would have engendered sympathy from the beginning, and that would have been a better way of doing it. And so I think you could have said from the outset.
Well, Meg, we got to leave it there, but I so appreciate it. And this is why we have to make sure that we as consumers are always very savvy. That's all the time we have for Jenna Ellis tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night.